Hello, this is going to be the fifth video in the A2 IT JavaScript series, and we're going to look at modifying some styles and modifying some styles using JavaScript. So we spoke earlier, well, I mentioned earlier at the start that the DOM included all your CSS and all your HTML. So far we've only really modified any HTML elements, so this time we're going to look at changing those styles. There's thousands of things you can do with this and lots of effects you can create, and it's pretty intuitive. There's a couple of sort of gotchas in there, which I'll look at briefly with the height, and I'll try and help you sort of debug some of those. But yeah, so let's just get started. I'm going to show you with some code I made earlier. So here is a web page I've created. You'll see some styles that are applied to IDs, hence the hashtag. We're not going to go into any real depth with CSS because it's not in the syllabus. It really should be, but that's not for me to say, so let's not get bogged down with that. This is a pretty basic web page with 6 buttons on it that will change the color of the box, or make it bigger or smaller, or reset it back to this. Just to explain the HTML, it's pretty straightforward. I have an outer div that contains everything. I then have a heading line that's standard. I've created a div which has these properties, which makes it yellow and centered. I also have some controls that are grouped together in a div just to tidy them up, just to keep everything organized, and that's all the HTML that's there. So these first ones here are pretty straightforward, so we'll do those first, and then bigger and smaller are more complicated than I initially thought, but it's worth having a look at, and I'll talk about some debugging stuff as well in case you encounter stuff that just doesn't behave as you want it to. Hopefully you won't need to, because most of the stuff should be pretty structured, but there are situations where it can be it's just some situations where JS, especially interactions with the DOM, don't quite pan out how you expect them to. But we'll look at that in more detail in a second. So first of all, as we've done before, we need to create functions that will be attached to these onClick events. So my first function is going to be called turnRed, and it will turn the button red. I forgot to do one thing. So in the past, we have accessed our elements using this document element by ID and then the name of the element. And this is fine and good, and it works very, very well. In fact, it's the way we do it. But it's quite long. Like, this is quite unwieldy, and we're going to have to do at least six calls to the DOM to get this box. So as we look to the variables, you can assign objects to variables, and I believe this is an object. Let's just quickly check that, because I don't want to tell you lies. I will talk more about alert boxes later. If I was to run this, it's an object, yeah. So we can store objects in a variable, like we said. So we can get rid of this bit and store the DOM object transforming box in a variable called box. And that just saves us quite a lot of typing. Box is considerably shorter than all of this. So anyway, in our function we can call box, and then to modify the styles you just look at the style property, and the style property then has further properties, because style is an object that contains all of these things, which are almost every style you're likely to encounter in CSS. So we're going to do the background color. One thing worth noting, JavaScript will use camel case, which means words are separated by a capital letter, apart from the first one. CSS and HTML often use spinal case, which is hyphen separated. So background color, capital C, and background color, background dash color are exactly the same property. It's just this is how JavaScript deals with it, and this is how CSS deals with it. And we can set that property to red. Oops. You can use a hexadecimal color here as well. Anything you assign, as long as it would be valid in HTML and CSS, will be valid. And we can duplicate this a few times just to create the other styles we need as well. So we're gonna, gonna have turn blue, which turns blue. It'd be stupid if it turned it red. And we're also gonna have turn green. And this function should also be called turn green. Okay, then we just attach these functions to the buttons. So turn red, turn green, and turn blue. And we can file, preview in browser, and come. So red, green, blue, red, green, blue. So that works as expected. That's fine and good and great. The next thing we need to do is the height. So, and to make it bigger, we're going to increase the height and the width. To make it smaller, we're going to decrease the height and the width. There's a couple of issues with this, using what we already know. If we alert, just to show you this, and we get box.style.height, it does not display. So it has no value there. We can set that value, but it's not taking this value. And also, it's not good to do this. Well, it's not working. Similarly, with type of, this is also a string. And since we need to do math, since we need to do calculations to increase the size of the box, it's not ideal either. So there is another method, and it's worth being aware of this, but it's called client height, and client height is the size of the box in the client window. So it's a number as well. And if I close this one more time and show you the last thing here, if we show this alert, it's 400, which is the size of our window. So if we just want to use this to get our height, and we can use the style method to modify the height. So we don't need this anymore. Create a new function called bigger. So what we're going to do is create a variable called new height. This will be an integer, and we don't want to set a height because we want the box to keep getting bigger. We don't want just to set it to like 800 and have a big box, because it's not called big, it's called bigger. So it should increase every click. So we want to modify our height. So if we get box.clientHeight, which was the size of the box in your client window, and then we can modify this by 50. So that'll get a new value that's 50 bigger than the current box. We can do the same again with the width. And then using the method that we know, the method that makes sense, box.style.height equals. So there's one more thing to be aware of here. When we use the style property for height, it is 400 and then the units. So just putting in a value of 400, or 450, which we would get from new height, wouldn't work. So we also need to add a px onto it. And we can duplicate this and add the width and a new width and semicolon, semicolon. We can add bigger here. Oh, there is no capital. And oh no, wrong place. Terrible mistake. That's smaller. Smaller? No, no, no. And bigger. Smaller is going to be exactly the same, but with minuses instead of pluses. And presumably it's going to be called smaller. So if we save that this time, and file, preview in Chrome, box gets bigger, box gets smaller. Make it green, bigger. Reset still doesn't work. And reset is going to be very, very similar. Just applying all the default settings. If you want to try that yourself, now would be a good time. You can pause it and then see how I'll do it, or alternatively you can just watch, and I'll do that now. So if we close this, the function's smaller. Oh no, function reset. Oops. Default. These are reserved words, sorry. Reset. Let's just call it res. We know what that means. Alright, and this is going to take the box height and set it to 400 px. It's going to take the box width, set that to 400 px, and it's going to take the box dot background color. Oh, sorry. Background color, and set that to yellow. And file, preview in Chrome. The box tiny and green, press reset, and that didn't work because I forgot to add it. See, mistakes are easy to make if you try to be too hasty. File, preview in Chrome. There. And that is modifying styles. So as I said, the important thing here, most styles are going to just be box.style, and then you can get the property that way. And there's loads and loads of them. Basically anything you could theoretically add in your CSS, you can also add using this method, add or change. And that's about it really. Next time we're going to look at some more JavaScript stuff. We're going to look at selection, and then we're going to look at how that can be used in a web app as well. So I'll see you then. Thank you. Bye.